Hello, something guys and gals. This is Something Guy 912. Well, the Wonderlands project is currently put on hold while I recover from my recent hand injury, as well as waiting for my new CPU card to come in, as I both want the rendering process of those videos shortened and can't really record myself playing an FPS with only one hand, or I could, but the gameplay would be embarrassing. So, needless to say, the best I can do is more of these response style videos that I've done, and if you go into my back catalog of such things, you'll notice that my ire usually is relegated towards more left-leaning content creators and hardly towards the right. That is not a bias for the right, more than noticing how increasingly manic the left have become, which will get people to claim that I'm ignoring the faults of the right. The issue with that thought is that politics aren't Newton's third law of motion, that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, and in this case, for every reactionary there is not an equal and opposite reactionary. And that, in absence of my thoughts towards the right, does not mean that I condone or prescribe to their behavior. As should be justly proven if this video is anything to go by. To preface, on top of the preface I just had to give, there's a YouTuber named Synthetic Man, who's a bit of a contrarian on the surface regarding his feelings towards video games, but underneath is an absolute schizo of right-wing talking points that he is the NPC of those who scream woke at anything they don't like. In fact, he's very much the straw man of that argument left-leaning people make when people do notice woke things in media, and Synthetic Man decided to die on the hill of the latest Zelda affront by stating such things as the goat character Raru being a euphemism for Satanism, Link is a bottom because whoever he shakes hands with have bigger hands than he, believing that an interracial relationship is woke, and I shit you not, using his own knowledge of pornography to make a case that the warrior women known as Gerudo are not because they're drawn with penises in them. Now, I should also clarify that I have not touched a single Zelda game and have not a frame of reference to vindicate or criticize the other things Synthetic Man said in his hour-long video about Tears of the Kingdom, and mainly, this video is more directed at his response to those that saw how utterly absurd his talking points were regarding his self-prescribed schizo talk. But like when I covered Jim Sterling talking about The Last of Us Part 2, I shouldn't have any issue criticizing S-Man's own logic for making his points, double downing on his own points, and his coon-brained and politics-brained mindset. So, take it away, Synthetic Man.
So, Twitter discovered my Tears of the Kingdom review, and it's safe to say they're not happy about it.
And what could possibly be the reason for that? And I find it odd how you describe Twitter like a single person and as a pejorative when just as equally people could take umbrage with your video on any other platform.
Despite only gaining about 10,000 video views over the past couple days, I've gained nearly 3,000 more dislikes. I wish I'd taken a screenshot of what it looked like upon release, but the like-dislike ratio was something like 82 to 84%, and now it's down to 55.
I'm not sure why he brings this up as though some kind of discrepancy, but later we will find out he has a lot of crazy conspiracy theories about how YouTube shadow banned him, but not comments or dislikes regarding him, because that apparently makes sense.
And you might be wondering, well, what was the thing they took such an issue with? Well, if you watched more than 20 minutes of the video, I think you could probably guess.
In preparation for this, I did watch that video after seeing the Twitter clips of the batshit insane things you said, and more than 20 minutes too, no less. But the problem, again, is that because I haven't played any of the Zelda games, I can't in good conscience verify whether what he's saying is accurate or not gameplay-wise. And whether or not I do comment on those aspects doesn't deter criticism towards the outlandish claims you made about the characters, story, or Nintendo's intentions to inject some narrative into children.
They didn't like my self-labeled schizo tangent. I wish it was just tendies being mad about me shitting on their new favorite game. No, it's people who clearly don't even play video games complaining about politics.
Yeah, it was a schizo tangent because it was both completely unnecessary if you sincerely don't believe it and absurd if you do. But after watching your spate with God of War Ragnarok and some of the outright lies and crazy notions you had about its narrative, I don't think what you said you believe are schizo posts. Those are just the things you believe. And I'm confused on your latter part. I thought the non-woke people are all about getting politics out of my video games, but in your mind, the people who complained about you putting politics in your video don't play video games now.
And you know, normally I wouldn't think that this is really worthy of a response video, but because these mentally ill people have taken it to the point where they're mass upvoting each other's comments and making all sorts of weird passive-aggressive responses that were not well thought out, to put it lightly, I thought, let's read out a few of them and I'll just respond to them as calmly as I can.
People upvoting each other. Isn't that what we call agreeing with one another? And sorry to spoil you all, but S-Man is hardly calm when he addresses these people, which says much more on his mental well-being than theirs.
It all began when I was browsing my favorite website and noticed that someone had attached a Twitter post reacting to my video thumbnail and title, I guess.
I mean, yeah, it'd be embarrassing too to proclaim yourself as some right-leaning conservative and then use implied cuckoldry art as your thumbnail and almost get people to assume you have a fetish for that kind of stuff.
And later, someone else on Twitter posted the schizo tangent specifically. And as you can imagine, Twitter was not happy with me pointing out that Nintendo has further diversified the Hyrule landscape.
Again, I don't have a lot of knowledge regarding the Zelda universe, but my impression of it was that it was always quite diverse, but beyond just race, but across species too, so it's weird to take issue with it now when it wasn't a problem before, or trying to suggest Nintendo put more of it.
It wasn't enough to have the Gerudo, the Rito, the Gorons, the Zora, and now the Zonai. No, on top of all of that, half the Hylians is some shade of brown, despite Hyrule itself basically being one giant island landscape, which should have people look relatively similar to one another, especially when you have the Gerudo as specifically the brown people. It stands out that much more when Hylians are every shade of the rainbow.
So I looked up these races that S-Man quickly mentioned, and all, save for Hylians and Gerudo, are humanoid-looking animals, meaning their race shouldn't really matter because an animal's fur should not be compared to one's skin, especially when TOTK's races have a flat color palette and doesn't have the fidelity to texture every contour of the fur. Moreover, S-Man mentioned how Hyrule is an island and that it would be racially homogenous, but has issue with the racial hegemony of there being mostly brown people in said island? Or is he saying that Nintendo are trying to have it both ways?
Twitter also didn't like me pointing out how Rauru looks vaguely similar to Baphomet.
Because he's a goat? Like, I want to imagine when S-Man goes to a petting zoo and thinks it's satanic imagery when goats are present.
Which, like I say in the original video, could very likely just be the result of Japan inserting subtle Christian symbolism into their games, which they used to do a lot.
Or, hear me out, they just designed him that way because he looks cool, and that what you were doing was called a logical stretch of the imagination.
But of course, I also offer an alternative possibility. Or again, if you want to take the schizo angle, this is a result of a certain cult organization full of quote-unquote elites that are subtly inserting their propaganda into video games.
Yeah, that would be insane, but the sad thing is that you actually believe it, and think that being around the bush saves you from the accusation that you do. Ever since EFAP undressed you, you've had to be much more careful about what you say because you know your takes are unhinged, but don't have any honesty in yourself to admit to that, either because you have cultivated an audience that is just as, if not more crazy than you, that you must placate to, or that you grift on the belief of being as honest as possible while not having any commitment to the genuinely crazy things you believe. As evidence here, the farther we go along.
No, I wasn't being sarcastic. There's a reason I labeled it a schizo tangent. I realized how out there some of the views I shared there were, but I was throwing that little nugget in there for the stream audience. We like to get pretty schizo in there. The chat loves that shit.
So let me get this straight. You are complaining that people took the clip of your schizo post as your genuine thoughts, and instead of just stating that no, they aren't and was unnecessary, put that in for the sake of your own radicalized audience? Which goes to show that creators don't radicalize their audience radicalizes their creators, but How is this really helping your case that you feel compelled to signal boost these beliefs that you yourself don't believe?
But like I alluded to with the gay marriage allegory, I don't actually believe that Rauru is supposed to be symbolic of Baphomet. But considering we live in Clown World, I'm not going to completely rule out the possibility. We live in a time where there are unironic Satanists. Not to mention, have you actually looked at a pride parade anytime in the last few years, or one of these drag queen story hours? They're pretty fucking satanic, let's be honest.
See, this is what happens when you let real occurrences plague your mind into making comical reaches about how a game is supplanting those similar ideals in. On top of his half-hearted backtracking on his comparison, trying to rationalize it with things that have nothing to do with the claim he made. How does pride parades becoming degenerate have anything to do with looking at Rauru and seeing Baphomet? You even said you believed it was because of Japan having made titles with Christian symbolism before, but now claim it was because of Drag Queen Story Hour that made you believe this connection? Ultimately, he can't outright admit that it was absurd because that would require him to not believe it in the first place, which he does, but trying to save face for it.
So knowing that BlackRock and ESG exist for a fact, yet no doubt some Twitter idiots would say it's a conspiracy theory, it certainly is not too outlandish to say that a company could receive compensation for promoting certain things that those people want promoted.
So I didn't have a clue what ESG and BlackRock were, and did assume he was being delusional, so I decided to look them up. BlackRock is the company that has gone forward with the ESG model, and the model itself is basically a corporation's own social credit score, which, yes, is a concerning rubric that does explain the sudden pandering to certain notions by companies lately. With that being said, nowhere did S-Man imply that Nintendo was abiding by the ESG model in his original video, nor can we say for certain that Rauru was indicative of that, and that is the fundamental issue with a lot of his conclusions about the nature of the game. Crying wolf and getting caught doing so.
Now, obviously, I have no proof that Free or any other groups I probably am not even allowed to say on YouTube are part of BlackRock. I can't prove that to you in any way, but I really don't see any harm in pointing it out.
Which is kind of why you shouldn't be implying that they are if you've got nothing to work with, and self-admit that they're completely out their beliefs. But again, I have suspected you do believe them regardless if you have the evidence either to appeal to your audience or to hide your own power level, because the words you tried to censor, that being Zionist and Freemason, YouTube gonna get me, do start to encroach the anti-Semitic sentiments you share throughout this video.
And really, that's why I don't feel bad about saying any outlandish things, because just the fact that I'm being attacked for noticing things, not even suggesting any actions, at no point did I advocate for censorship of a Nintendo game, that really justifies my belief.
Jim Sterling called, he wants his arguments back, which is pretty interesting how many parallels you two share despite being on completely opposite ends of the political spectrum. Horseshoe theory strikes again. But am I hearing that part correctly? I don't feel bad about the things I said, despite clearly making a video in response to the outlandish things I said, because the mere fact people would call me out for the outlandish things I say justifies them. Gotcha. And moreover, you can point out things, but the things you are pointing out require the most insane Laffy-Taffy stretches of the imaginations. You aren't pointing out anything, you're screaming at apparitions.
And the funny thing is, I'm not even religious. I've said this a few times already. I'm agnostic. I have been since I was like 12 years old. But I gotta say, these last few years, seeing the world fall apart in real time, and seeing how dumb people were with the reaction to COVID, I certainly have been swayed a certain direction. I won't say I follow any book, any creed, but it looks like Christians are being proven right with each passing day.
I don't understand how the way that the mask mandates were handled, I agree, extremely totalitarian, or other measures somehow gives argumentative dynamite to the concept of a single character being an allegory for Satanism. And which is it, Strawthetic Man? Was it the Japanese game companies, the pride parades, the ESG model, or Christianity that made you draw that connection first? You're all over the place with your reasoning, and still trying to make excuses for how you had nothing to go on to make such a claim.
And finally, Twitter was also angry that I made a "We was Kangs" joke about the Queen of Hyrule, because it's an easy joke and it's funny.
It would be briefly funny if not knowing your track record of genuinely crazy beliefs that you associate any brown-skinned person with that notion and play it off as a haha funny joke because you're hiding your power level again now, aren't you? All the more ironic considering that in said schizo tangent he mentioned how while the things he's saying are a stretch, that is how companies normalize that kind of behavior by being subtle about it. And here, he is doing just that very thing.
I don't really need to justify it in any way. And yeah, that's it. That's all. The controversy is over.
Oh, I really wish it was, but we've only just begun. And I guess we're not going to mention thinking Link is a bottom because of his hand size, or that Gerudo women are shemale because you've furiously investigate art of it.
Apparently that makes me a racist.
Well, saying "we was Kangs" to any brown-skinned person with no inkling of what that line evokes certainly is, and assuming it's woke for there to be an interracial couple is, too.
It also makes me anti-Semitic. Figure that one out. I never mentioned Jewish people one time.
Oh, but you heavily implied it with you staying a shadowy group of wealthy elites who control everything in said critique video. Now, unless you are talking about globalists, that would be one thing, and as far as I know, YouTube doesn't ban people for saying that word, but again, I suspect that you did mean Jews by it, and wanted just enough of a benefit of the doubt where you can say it, but not explicitly so that you have an out. This is again what we like to call hiding one's own power level.
So after I'd found out about the controversy, of course I clicked on my own video to just see if these people started making suspicious comments, and what do I find right at the top? In just a couple hours, it had 150 likes, despite the video gaining no noticeable boost in views that it would from the algorithm. And look, I know some of you people are going to say this in itself is schizo shit, but when you've been making videos for 3 years, you tend to notice trends.
Well, apparently the trend of maybe my content just sucks and I make extremely bad points about video games seems to elude the possibility as to why your channel has been stagnant, and really, a comment with 150 likes while your video got 10k more views isn't hardly conspiratorial.
And my videos usually don't get a whole lot of hate until they get into the YouTube algorithm, and like I told you at the end of the last video, I've been shadow banned for a while, so forgive me if I don't believe this is organic.
You know, normally if you come to the conclusion that I only get backlash as soon as I'm remotely popular, would give you pause to consider why that might be, but instead that makes you double down on the conspiracy further. You honestly sound like you're a few steps from pulling a Nassim Agdam.
This had me laughing so hard, borrowing DNA from the Highlands. I legitimately don't understand what you're saying. Is you're implying that there's a reverse Jacob that invented the Gerudo people? And like the fact about this game being satanic / grooming kids. God, you guys remind me of my grandparents who called Pokemon and Harry Potter tools of the devil. Keep up the great work, genuinely entertaining schizo post. Now, if you're dumb or only read the first half, you might think this is genuinely someone entertained by my video.
Nope, I figured they were being sarcastic and that they were laughing at you, not with you, but wait till you get a load of this.
Because someone honestly tried to tell me that this comment was a compliment. Well, just taking one look at the replies will tell you that's obviously not the case, but do you really not think this is subtly, passive-aggressively mocking me about the "you remind me of my grandparents who called Pokemon and Harry Potter tools of the devil"? He's alluding to the satanic panic.
No, I don't think he was being passive-aggressive at all. He very much outlines explicitly taking issue with some of the points you made, and him saying he was entertained by your schizo post was sardonic because he was entertained for reasons you didn't intend.
As I said in my response, which I'll read here. Very organic comment, and 150 likes in a few hours on a video that didn't spike in views. Did you come from Twitter or Discord, lol? No, I was implying that Gerudo aren't Hylian / humans, seeing as they only produce Gerudo when they mate with Hylians, which you would know if you actually played the games. As for your other points, you probably support leftist censorship, so your satanic panic illusion falls on deaf ears. I don't support censorship on any level from either side, but I will call out things I notice.
As will become quite prevalent, instead of responding to the points levied, at least mainly of how genuinely crazy his points are, results to ad hom attacks by insinuating he's pro-censorship when mentioning the satanic panic, when that example is him saying that S-Man is the one promoting censorship, not he. Also, I should note that there's a difference between noticing things and looking for things to notice, as you already stated that you apparently were noticing things for your own audience's sake. not your own.
And you can see what I mean by this comment when I said these people don't even play video games. I think pretty much everyone knows that the Gerudo produce more Gerudo when they mate, and they're all female except once in 100 years they produce one male for the species. So they have to go out into the world and find Hylians and mate with them. They literally tell you this in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom if you just talk to any of the wandering Gerudo NPCs.
Okay, I'm confused again. You were just bitching earlier about how the landscape of Hyrule is racially diverse, when if Gerudo can only give birth to women would mean that, as a consequence of perpetuating their own race, would naturally dilute the homogeny of both them and the Hylians they mate with? I haven't played any of the Zelda games, and even I'm noticing the discrepancy of your argument.
And like I said, I legitimately don't support censorship. I am not the Zoomer version of Jack Thompson who wants to make leftist propaganda illegal or something. No, I want it to die out naturally by nobody buying the products.
And how else do you suppose you accomplish that by giving complete false red flags to the things you notice in video games? I mean, we've already seen the attempts to make sweeping accusations of such things with the Dead Space remake or Resident Evil 4 remake, oftentimes complaining about things in those games that are either inconsequential to the experience or were already there in the original. And this ultimately won't help your side, as it will give leftists ammo to state that you very much call things woke, when it's simply things you don't like. You're not a Zoomer Jack Thompson, you're a right-wing Jim Sterling.
The problem is, certain shadowy groups of people have amassed so much money that they can fund games that sell 0 copies.
Now guys, I never explicitly said Jews control everything, but there is a shadowy group of people with lots of money who do. And if that isn't who you are referring to, then be more clear who, if you think it's globalists, the Illuminati, the Koch brothers, or George Soros, what have you, but again, I suspect it is the former rather than all the latters. And if I'm being honest, I'd rather you just say exactly who you mean instead of being this squirrely to give yourself an out whenever you're pushed on these subjects, because it only proves you've no conviction in the things you believe despite how much of a flagpole you've hoisted among them. It gives off the very grifter vibes that people ascribe to you.
Things like the Epic Game Store, paying developers millions of dollars to have exclusivity, and then the game bombs on their storefront because nobody likes it.
Yeah, real winning move on those shadowy organization now, isn't it? I don't know, man. If you're trying to fearmonger me that some wealthy elites are throwing money down a pit and lighting it on fire, it ain't working. I mean, I can think of a few examples of games made exclusive that had woke elements like Forspoken or Redfall that were dragged through the mud and never recovered. Like, I'm assuming you're a proponent of go woke, get broke, right? So why should it matter that these titles crash and burn? Wouldn't that discourage them from making games like that in future?
And of course, I have to mention it again, BlackRock and ESG. Companies literally have a social credit score that if they insert propaganda into their products, they get money. This is a fact, people. This is not something I made up. There's a reason so many channels have talked about it now. It's basically common knowledge for anybody who's not living with their head buried in the sand, but these are Twitter degenerates we're talking about here.
Well, guess I'll say it again for posterity. Yes, that model is extremely concerning, but nowhere in your original vid did you provide evidence an ESG model was used for Tears of the Kingdom, nor even mention the possibility of an ESG model present. So this is just you post hoc rationalizing why your schizo tangent wasn't so schizo.
And so what was the reply to my fairly measured response, at least for me anyway?
When the lunatics run the asylum, anything can seem normal.
Calm down, you unwhipped cream. Okay. With 426 likes at the time of me recording this. Now I realize that YouTube shadow bans any real insults at this point, so this is why modern discourse on the internet has gotten so pathetic and kind of boring in general, because you're not allowed to actually insult people anymore.
Well, judging how people got so offended by the non-offensive insult, it seems YouTube discourse is still alive and well. People talking past each other. And maybe, S-Man, just maybe, that person thought calling you unwhipped cream was more amusing than the totally not boring approach of calling you a faggot. Just an idea.
I actually wrote a response to a few of these comments that was actually too spicy even for me posting on my own channel, apparently, because YouTube deleted it. And no, I'm not going to tell you what it is because it clearly violates YouTube's terms of service, but I was pretty annoyed, I'm not going to lie.
You can't insult people anymore, which is why I got so upset at a non-insult that YouTube blocked some of the comments I made. Yeah, totally not coping there, dude.
And what's the next one? Man, go back to 2016. The amount of times I've heard a variation of this comment over the last few years. Do leftists think right-wing people just disappeared after the 2020 election or something?
No, and I don't know how you made that conclusion from that comment when clearly they're invoking that you're stuck in the past and haven't budged from it.
This has never made any sense to me. This is what happens when you spend all day in an echo chamber. You seem to think that your delusional, extremist, communist Discord server is a reflection of real life.
I haven't heard a better case study of the pot calling the kettle black than I did just there. What the hell are you on? You literally think TOTK was made to indoctrinate kids and think that at any time anyone criticizes you, that they must be for censorship, on top of some other ad homs thrown your way. Like shit, you already said you say the crazy things to appeal to your stream audience's mindset. Is that not perpetuating an echo chamber, my dude?
These people are the perfect cattle because they believe everything that government and corporations tell them. They're probably vaxxed and triple boosted and wearing masks in their car to this day.
Yep, that was a whole lot of baseless ad homs to a forward comment at you. Totally a measured reading of what they meant by that. Moreover, I find it funny how conspiracy theorists to this day constantly feed off the same drivel between each other while claiming you're the one who's indoctrinated. Bit projection much?
Or if they're one of the few that's actually wisened up, they're not going to admit that they were doing something stupid before because that would mean they were wrong, and as we know, they're never wrong.
And this is all assuming the prior ad homs accurately apply to this specter of a person you've made up in your head? Pretty creative imagination about the things people say to you, if I say so myself.
So seriously, I actually want an answer from these people to this question in case any of you are still so ass-blasted by my opinions that you decide to brigade this video as well.
Opinions? Holy shit, are you fucking new to the internet? Saying, it's just my opinion, doesn't give you an out to say inaccurate or ridiculous shit. Otherwise, I could say, well, in my opinion, Synthetic Man is a closeted furry homosexual that wants Sidon to buck break him like the twink he is. And you'd have to shut the fuck up since it's just my opinion, bro.
Why do you think right-wing people just left the planet?
I'll answer that question with another question, or perhaps a few. Why do you think people believe right-wing people left the planet when saying, go back to 2016, as it can equally apply to left-wing people as well? What dignified left-wing person genuinely calls themselves an SJW nowadays, or thinks the Bully Hunters campaign was well conceived, or that we should ban the word bossy?
Do you really think that all normies are now radical socialists or some shit?
Again, please explain to me where you found the time to perform that insane reach on that comment to make that conclusion.
Wouldn't there be rioting every day in the streets in every city?
Look, I'm not a fan of left-wing people, but even I don't think leftists would encourage constant non-stop rioting, especially if we're to believe that left-wing people hold a monopoly in politics.
At every moment, buildings would be burning as they're trying to take down the corporations, except Disney, except Nintendo, except any corporation that agrees with my politics, which just means they put an LGBT flag on their Twitter. So, in reality, nothing would be burning because these people have no fucking principles.
Wait, what? So you would prefer them to constantly riot and burn because you think that's pertinent to their beliefs? Because clearly you don't like that, but also are calling out their cowardice in the statements they make? And may I remind the audience that Synthetic Man has gone on upwards of 2.5 minutes ranting about the things he doesn't like about left-wing people simply because someone told him to go back to 2016. Totally not seething though, guys. Trust him.
They don't even believe in an ideology.
I'm so confused. So they don't believe in anything, but believe in LGBT pride, drag queen story hour, vaccines, what the government tells them, are pro-censorship, and the like. And I'm aware he's going to turn around and say they only believe these things when convenient, but then lies the issue that you ascribe beliefs to this group to mock them while tacitly acknowledging they don't believe in them. So which is it, S-Man?
There's a reason why slacktivism used to be a popular term, because all these people do is bitch and moan on the internet day in and day out, and then they have the nerve to tell me that I'm constantly miserable.
Whoa there, S-Man. That monitor you're screaming at is becoming more of a mirror by the day. And I don't know. If you're willing to rant about a comment completely vague of their beliefs about how much the left pisses you off, drag any inference from a video game into some conspiracy theory about how they're indoctrinating people, and go on streams to circle the wagons to your audience about the things that upset you, I think, yes, you are a miserable person. In a way, it is very much like the politics-addled minds of those that think everything is political because they need it to be, because they only concern themselves with coming into every outlet with a boot to the perpetually crushing neck. It certainly would make me black-pilled on life if I decided to act the way you're acting right now.
You saw an opinion you didn't like, so you dislike-bombed my video, and I'm the miserable one?
Yes, that's how the court of public opinion works. You share an opinion, they share theirs by not liking the video. How is this hard to understand? And how what you just said not apply to the video game you critiqued? You played a video game you didn't like, so you made a video to hate on it, and you're calling the audience the miserable one?
I actually said Tears of the Kingdom was a good game, which you would know if you actually watched the video, which is the thing that tears me up about all these. You're not going to see a single actual criticism of any of my opinions about the gameplay or the world design.
Except the first comment you pinned that very much criticized your analysis of the game's world design, and furthermore, just because you like something doesn't mean you still can't have poor critique of the game. Like, for example, I like BioShock, but really didn't care much for the turn-based combat of the game. Easy as that. If you wanted people to cover all the facets of the video and not the schizo tangents, I can sympathize, but in my unique scenario, I can't do that because I haven't played it. But again, that doesn't mean that I can't criticize the specific things you said in those clips or in this very video of yours, like I did with Jim Sterling regarding TLOU2.
It's funny to me that YouTube disabled dislikes, but they made no efforts to try and curb astroturfing like this.
Remember, self-proclaimed against censorship S-Man wants YouTube to throttle people from downvoting his video under the suspicion of astroturfing dislikes, because what reason would people take issue with his vid genuinely? He's always right, which is fucking ironic how he wants to claim left-wing people are obstinate about being wrong.
The YouTube algorithm can obviously detect when 3,000 dislikes mysteriously appear on a video over a few days with a disproportionately low amount of new views on the video.
You already said you got like 15k new views, so I'm not sure how that's disproportionate in the slightest. In fact, it would seem disproportionate in favor of you that 80% of those 15,000 viewers didn't bother to dislike the vid.
And analytics can track when someone clicks on a video from a different website. But to drudge up an old controversy, I think we both know the only reason that they hid the dislikes was because people would dislike bomb advertisements from major corporations or Joe Biden speeches. And so, of course, they don't want the public to see the massive amount of backlash toward the content so that people can't organize on any level.
Well, apparently if people organize against your video, that's an affront to you and want YouTube to crack down on that, so how are you not better than they?
Which has always been the goal of these people. It's the same reason why they banned so many right-wing people from Twitter before Elon took over. Which actually is like a whole different subject I could go into.
Yes, because I've already started to forget where this schizo tangent of yours is going. Weren't you responding to comments made on your last vid?
Why the hell do you fucking maniacs still use that site? Weren't you gonna use somewhere else because Elon is an alt-right billionaire troll or some shit, right?
I mean, I'd ask the same thing for all the right-wing people or people in general who complain about Twitter who still use it. There's a little hypocrite in everyone that isn't specifically a left-wing thing.
I gotta say, I have been tempted to actually start using a Twitter account just because he added that fact-check feature, which is constantly debunking the stupid shit you people post all the time.
We'd love to see that. Wouldn't we love to see that, Lee? But you do know that fact check feature isn't exclusively used to dunk on left-wing people, right? Or do you think right-wing people are infallible by design? And I guess for all the hatred you have for Twitter, you still have enough curiosity in you to use one. So much for your moralizing about other people's lack of principles.
Let's just blast through some more of these real quick and then I'll respond afterward. You called me out on my dumbass takes. You must be a liberal from Twitter and like censorship. Dude understands free speech, but not the concept that he's also allowed to be criticized.
Nothing but a round of applause for summarizing S-Man's entire cope with his video.
You literally tried to imply that the game is grooming kids. Also, I hope none of you genuinely try to argue in good faith with someone whose clear fetishes are in the thumbnail and is attempting to point out supposed satanic grooming in a Zelda game. In Minecraft, the diamonds is some of the strongest armor in the game. Was De Beers secretly placing propaganda in it? Was Notch actually a space Trotskyite? There is no devil, grow up. Now, I just want to remind you, even if you think one or two of these are good digs, these are the type of people that think it is completely normal and rational to chop your dick off and wear a dress.
Holy fucking shit. It's like S-Man failed to read the first reply he got and very much played himself by doing just that. Instead of hearing out the criticism, he just resorts to not only an ad hom, but a tu quoque on top of that. Where the fuck are you getting this from, S-Man? Why is it when people call you out on your points, your immediate pivot is, this person thinks it's okay to chop your balls off because I hate gender-affirming care? Is it because you need any reason to dismiss someone because you got nothing poignant yourself to say in return?
And now I realize this video is probably going to be demonetized, but I had to get that one in there.
Why did you have to get that in there? What compels you to accuse people of things you not only know if they believe, but more than likely take umbrage with too? It's just like that one dude who you spouted off in your God of War Ragnarok phase, who is a right-winger himself, who you didn't agree with your assessment of the game. All you're doing is alienating yourself when you make these unfounded claims.
Seriously though, with the radical change in gender ideology and the slow normalization of pedophilia, and I don't care if you think that's schizo, that's apparent to anybody who's paying attention, but you keep lying to yourself about that.
I know you don't, but I think it is, because apropos of nothing, you've yet again derailed into a rant about the things you take issue with, likely because you got nothing cogent to say and want to signal boost to your already captured audience. Like, I'm seriously starting to suspect that you wanted this video out here to rant and rave about the various politics that trouble you and use the backlash of your TOTK vid as the means to do so, and had no invested interest in actually tackling what people took umbrage with said video.
Do you want to know the amount of times I've seen some random Twitter user advocate for the banning of Lolly, and then it turns out they're an actual pedophile who's been arrested? Or was arrested after that post. It's not a fucking coincidence, dude. These people are fucked in the head. I don't even give a shit about Lolly. I think it's just drawings.
Kind of a weird proposition for you to defend lolly porn if you think the kinds of things people do at pride parades is degenerate and satanic, no less. Not to say that lolly porn is on the same level as child pornography, even if it's still gross, but regardless, a weird hill for you to die on. And did I forget already, but wasn't this video at some point about what people took issue with regarding your video?
People seem to think I was a pedo for my take on Atreus and Angraboda, even though they're both horny teenagers and probably would want to plow each other.
Oh, so now we're pulling a Mod and Bailey here? I'm getting a veritable gift bag of tactics from this video. You said much more than Atreus and Angraboda should fuck. You said that Atreus should inbreed with offspring from the children he spurned from Angraboda in some kind of twisted way to dilute her race to be eventually white from the result, and used "it's Norse tradition though" as the reason. So no, you weren't just implying sex, you implied racial hegemony, incest, inbreeding, and population control by stating Atreus would kill any sons birthed from this thought of yours.
I'm sorry if the truth hurts your feelings because you were a loser in high school, a shut-in who never saw any of this shit. Well, despite what you might think of me, I did know multiple people who had sex in middle school and high school, and they weren't lying, dude.
This just sounds like a huge projection, especially considering you've self-admitted to being an incel and is currently living with their mother. because wanting Atreus and Angerboda to fuck isn't the truth. That's just you again being too coon-brained and ideologically poisoned to notice how absurd you sound.
I'm gonna try not to get too personal into story time here, but I went to a majority black middle school, and there was a pregnant 14-year-old girl when I went. Now, am I saying that's okay? No, of course it's not. It's kind of fucked up. But when you're trying to set up two characters as a future husband and wife, they should at least have a tiny bit of chemistry.
That really explains a lot about your mentality, doesn't it? Use implied cuckoldry in your thumbnail, thinks it's woke that there's an interracial relationship, implied countless times that Atreus should tongue punch Angerboda's cooch. It all goes back to what you saw in middle school, and we're jealous you didn't get to experience that yourself. But before I put my foot in my mouth and psychoanalyze from that sentence alone, where in the world did we go from covering comments on your vid to you now trying to rationalize the crazy things you said regarding God of War Ragnarok?
Just some innocent teenage love. In the fucking 80s, there were movies all the time about kids falling in love with girls, and none of you guys seem to think that was pedo shit.
Maybe because falling in love isn't the same as, I want these two underage characters to fuck to fulfill my racial diluting fantasies, perhaps. Or maybe that Atreus and Angerboda were just friends, and not every relationship between a man and a woman needs to be romantic to be meaningful. But why should I be surprised that a self-professed incel thinks getting laid is equivalent to a meaningful relationship?
Or maybe you never watched the movies, I don't fucking know. But what I do know is none of these Twitter, Reddit, Discord types batted an eye when it turned out that monkeypox was spread through sexual intercourse, and all of a sudden, these kids start getting it somehow, especially ones that had two dads.
Well, it looks like we've effectively left the stratosphere of the topic at hand, and now I have to endure satanic panic man ranting and raving about those Twitter, Discord, Reddit types and what they believe, because it's perfectly reasonable and not mentally ill to describe one entire belief structure to a social media platform.
All they ever do is deflect. They never will acknowledge if their side does something horrific.
Oh, just like when people criticize you and you deflected by claiming they're the kind of person who's okay with people chopping their dicks off, or not being sorry about the outlandish things you say because people calling you out on it affirms it. I know you made this video, but it feels more like a movie with all the projections you're casting right now.
I'm not sure if I could be bothered to dig up one of these comments, but I did see a few that also implied that I shouldn't have put any of the schizo tangent in the video at all. Well, here's the thing. It's my channel. It's my video. I don't owe you anything. I can make whatever I want, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. So, yeah, I don't really care if you think that.
Unless, of course, a certain long man pulls up all the crazy inane shit you said on top of you self-proclaiming that if the wrong people were to hear it, you'd certainly be out of a YouTube career. So I guess you do owe it to yourself not to put that out there if you think it compelled you to respond to the backlash regarding it. But you already shown your hand. You can't unfuck the situation you put yourself in because you know you genuinely believe it.
But if you really want a real explanation, the reason I put things like that in the videos is to make them entertaining, because, let's be honest, reviewing video games isn't really that interesting, especially when I don't really get review codes.
Well, thank fucking God for that, although I'm sure Sony and Nintendo are waiting on bated breath for your insight into the gaming landscape, which, given your attitudes towards the gaming industry, is largely cynical. It doesn't surprise me you need to buff the videos with things you're more passionate about, in spite of how irrelevant it is to the game.
So my videos don't serve the usual purpose, which is to shill the game to you so you'll buy it. Let's be honest, that's what 95% of reviewers on this platform are doing.
Yeah, I heard such rave reviews about the Lord of Ring Gollum, Redfall, Forspoken, the Callisto Protocol, Jedi Survivor, The Last of Us 1 PC port, and many, many other exceptions to that rule of yours.
But since I don't have that opportunity and I'm not paid off in any way, I do want to at least make the videos funny to watch.
Oh man, I got such a huge belly laugh when you used your own porn history as an argument about how woke TOTK is. Wait, you mean to tell me you were serious?
Let me laugh even harder.
If that initial comment that I pinned was being completely genuine about being entertained about the schizo tangent and wasn't obviously being passive aggressive, I would have been completely fine with it.
S-Man, are you autistic? you do realize it could have been entertained for reasons you didn't intend, like how it was entertaining, how you genuinely thought Nintendo were trying to propagandize children with their video game.
I'm glad people are entertained by the schizo tangents. In fact, there was a bunch of other comments that literally said that, so if you're pretending, oh, Synthetic Man just can't take criticism, that wasn't even a criticism, it was just a backhanded insult.
Oh, woe is you, Mr. I bet you're for censorship and wanting men to cut off their dick, Strawthetic Man. You're really going to get bothered by shit being flung at you when you were the one flinging shit initially? And no, you can't take criticism if this video is anything to go by. You can't even address it without going 2 minutes ranting about something completely irrelevant to the things you've said in said video.
And I don't know why you guys are pretending to be autistic when obviously you all came from the same few websites to shit on my video.
Because they thought it was shit, which is, Rich, you're going to claim autism when you don't understand sarcasm and pull a Uno reverse card out your ass.
At a certain level, there's almost no reason to even address any more comments because none of them critiqued my video in any way.
Wow, we're really ripping a page out of Jim Sterling's playbook here, aren't we? I don't need to address the comments at me because I decided none of them were constructive, except the ones that were, in which you went on a whole frothing tangent to demonize and dismiss it wholesale.
A lot of these obsessed losers even went to my community post where I was just pointing out, yeah, somebody linked my video on Twitter and there's some delusional takes.
So says a dude who thinks the entirety of Twitter, Discord, and Reddit all conspired to give his video 3,000 dislikes. Yeah, totally not obsessed with feeding that negativity bias now, are we?
I just don't understand what the point of this is. You're not convincing anybody. You're just talking past all my audience.
I mean, I know it's a fool's errand to knock some sense into you by what I'm doing, but what matters is that I'm trying my utmost hardest to because I genuinely feel bad. Bad that you've let the toxicity of the extreme left turn you into nothing more but toxicity for the extreme right, trading one mouthpiece for another while convincing yourself you're truly free from the system of rabid, unflinching tribalist behavior. I very much could have ended up like you had I not curbed my own enthusiasm to outright villainize an entire political sect of behavior who are more often than not misguided rather than malicious in their own pursuits. It really goes a long way not to invent monsters in your own head to fight, lest you yourself become the monster.
I don't think any of these people understand the nature of debate. The whole point of it is to convince a third neutral party to your side.
And this is what you call convincing those to your side? Throwing baseless insults, not tackling the things they actually said rather than what you think they believe?
These are a bunch of lunatics all talking to each other. The type of people who will call you an incel when they themselves have never had sex.
Well, sex-depraved man, I don't call you an incel as pejorative as some people would. That's literally a matter of fact with you, which is weird how you obsess over the sex lives of others as foundational to their talking points while using your own porn history as a baseline for argumentation.
This is why we need to bring back asylums, unironically, and I don't care if these people are abused because they deserve it.
How am I not surprised that on top of being sex-addled, ideologically minded, and bigoted that you also harbor sociopathic tendencies as well? And you can try to frame this as another schizo tangent all you like, but no one who thinks abused people deserve the abuse they get can ever just say that in jest afterward.
You're really telling me these people should have the right to vote? The type of people who are quite literally not a part of society. They probably don't even pay taxes. Not that I think anybody should at this point with our traitorous government, but...
Well, so much for being against all kinds of censorship you muttered earlier, wanting certain people relinquish their right to vote for taking issue with a video you made regarding a video game. Like, it would be one thing if he was being brigaded to remove the video or people were false flagging him, but he's letting his true colors show merely by people calling a spade when they see one. Now, as much as you would like me to see me repeat myself when it comes to the things Sociopathic Man says, he continues to wax nonsense some more about what he thinks the people who criticize his video believe, which is nothing more than extremely loose assumptions, ad homs, and the like about disabilities, trans rights, and what a woman is. I know that he mentioned earlier about how people can't even cover his video on TOTK in whole, but if all you're going to do is not even stay on topic and just machine gun bullet point all the things that bother you about the left, then it's not worth my time discussing because I've already explained well enough here how it doesn't do you any favors.
I just can't get over the fact that these people never argue in good faith. Like the person pointing out that I put my fetish in the thumbnail. I purposely made that thumbnail because it was funny, and I know Nintendo fans and cuckoldry go together like peanut butter and jelly.
S-Man, you are a Nintendo fan. You said it yourself that you're presumably knowledgeable on all the Zelda games, which is why you took issue with the inclusive behavior of Tears of the Kingdom. And on top of you implying Link is a bottom and the Gerudo all have penises, all you're doing is emboldening that you have too much sex on the brain. And I'm not trying to kink shame here, be into whatever you wish, as long as you don't want to hurt other people in the process, but don't try to use your own depravity as a way to claim other people are depraved. You're acting no better than when Anita Sarkeesian would see any female as a sex object because she too was ashamed of her own depravity and wanted to project that upon others.
It was obviously clickbait to catch people's attention. I think everyone understood that.
But I'm totally not a grifter, guys. Trust me. I was just pretending to be depraved and pretending to be a bigot and pretending to be retarded. That's the gist of this copium spiral you're falling into.
It is a complete waste of time to argue with these people because they won't even address any of your points.
Jim Sterling might as well sue you for all the intellectual property of your arguments you're stealing from him.
Because half these people didn't even fucking play the game. This was literally just about politics. That's it. I don't think I need to tell you something that a million other political channels have already told you, whether it's left or right, that the American people has become completely and utterly obsessed with politics 24/7, including me. I will admit that I think about this shit way too fucking much, especially when it doesn't actually affect my day-to-day life.
Wow, what a stunning lack of self-awareness coming from single-celled man to claim that the only reason people got upset at his vid was for the politics and not that he brought politics into it. Which is cute how you're now going to try to undo all the damage control you just did for your last vid here as though you're aware of your own faults, all the while continuing to act the same as you always had. You're evolving just backwards. And unfortunately, the remainder of the video is yet more of the same foibles that Synthol Man uttered thusly, making broad claims about people he has no idea of, bitching more about politics despite apparently being aware that he does it too much, more implicit Jewish conspiracies, the usual. About the only thing of note left is that there is a parallel with my last vid regarding iDubbbz' sudden ability to gain empathy, that Synthetic Man feels empathy for the enemies of his he sees as pathetic, sniveling, hypocritical, and the like. Well, S-Man, I do feel empathy for you, even in spite of everything I've said about you. I see you as a mirror of the worst things I could have been, the worst tendencies of talking out of both sides of your mouth, letting your own frustrations seep into the content you make, the complete utter inability to see reason in the face and stubbornly press on into a cascade of one's own self-fulfilled prophecy. It's not a healthy lifestyle, but I'm afraid you haven't learnt much from this and used it as a justification to air those grievances you mentioned, so utterly divorced from the subject at hand. I imagine if you do happen to come across this video, you'll claim like you did prior with anyone else that I couldn't even make a single point of criticism, that I'm the kind of person who believes in whatever has a stick up your ass today, call me woke until the lol cows come home, and all the rest. But as you do try to make excuses for yourself, I hope you find in my response a template for how not to respond to criticism.